Welcome to the coffee talk with salty Vixen's flair. Dive into deep thoughts, no topics to air.
Welcome to Salty Vixen's Coffee Talk, a place where I can talk about what is on a Salty Vixen's mind. Today's episode is titled Anxiety and Depression. Anxiety is something that we all get at some point in our lives, and sometimes it's triggers that cause it. And when anxiety kicks in, so does the depression. And unfortunately, when these triggers kick in, at least with me, my own friends don't give a shit. They've tired of me constantly going on repeat. And my family, well, they tune me out. It's life, and this happens to everybody. An example that comes to mind is Prince Harry. Oh yes, the ginger prince, the dashing prince. I knew him personally many years ago from polo and also when I was a patron for Sentabale. When Harry had his book come out called The Spare, and he went on a campaign of PR, he talked about his triggers, the trauma that caused it. That's why he put the book together. And I understand why he did it, although I still think it should have been written and submitted to people involved in a private way, not in a public setting. Because unfortunately, because of Harry, cans of worms were opened up with the media, and I was triggered by a few people that he had mentioned that I knew personally. But the reason why he did that, because people don't listen. He's an introvert like I am, and that's why I gravitated towards Prince Harry when I met him, because we're very similar in our personalities. And introverts, you know what I'm talking about. Introverts tend to stay in the same circle. And we may have a couple of extrovert friends, but generally we stay in the introverted world. What people don't realize about us introverts is, although we come off as shy and quiet, and we are in the beginning, once you get to know us, our introvert layers get turned off. And we become an extrovert. We become fun. But in the beginning, yes, we are incredibly recluse. And sometimes it's just our personalities, but oftentimes it's due to trauma. And this is something that I wanted to really talk about because we all experience trauma in our lives. It's just a fact of life. That's how it is. And it could be from something that you had growing up, maybe in the family. Or in my case, I was bullied tremendously growing up. And I'm talking about in 8th grade, 93, 94 school year. Now, some of those tuning in that know me are going, oh my God, Salty, you're not going to talk about this again. You know what? There are fresh listeners out there, so I am going to talk about it. And this is where my source of trauma, it's been identified as Complex-PTSD, which I think that needs to be talked about in the media a lot more because Complex-PTSD is huge. And since I know the source of Complex-PTSD more likely will listen to this podcast at some point, well, he should know he's a cause of my mental health problems. And you're going, oh my God, you're a basket case for having mental health. No, we all have mental health issues. And sometimes the triggers, the root of the trigger of your mental health is bigger than what you think. I've read stories that when you have a startup business, when you're not making the revenue, that can cause mental health problems. And that's 100% accurate. So can relationships when you're not getting intimacy for a long time. Or when you're not getting that person supporting you, or when you are burning a candle at both ends. I mean, shit happens. And friendships, same way. As we get older, our friendship circle gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And yeah, you're like, well, we have social media. But that's the problem with social media. It's all digital. The chances of you seeing that person you grew up with in middle school, high school, college is very slim because they have their lives. You have your own life. And you're just a footprint in the digital world. That's all it is. But we do seek for people's opinions on social media, especially when you're excited about something like, oh my gosh, I have a business, or oh my goodness gracious, I had something really cool that happened. I want to tell you. Or yeah, sad thing happened, or I'm stressed out. You just want to be a voice to be heard. And unfortunately, the digital world, they pretend to listen to you. But when you're really down and out, that's when people are like, oh my gosh, we're here for you. Here is a support system. And that's great to have. But you see, when I had sexting-gate was happening, when I opened up about that and told the person who caused my complex PTSD, instead of him listening, he shut me out. He cut me off. He said, I want to know. I don't want to know. But I really want to know. But I don't want to know. And that's just his personality. But it frustrated the shit out of me that he would, that he cut me off instead of listening to me. And I had gone through a very deep depression. I got into a dark place I never want to get back into again because the last time I got that dark was 93, 94 school year. Guess who was the source of that? the same dude. Now, he won't remember that because he can't remember things from the past like most people can't. And he would say to me, if we were talking, how do you remember that? I don't understand, because I know his personality. And again, we grew up together. I have an autobiographical memory, so of course I remember things on a deeper level. And when you have trauma, people going through trauma can remember things like you're living in it, that moment. To give a proper definition, what complex PTSD is, it's called complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a stress-related mental disorder generally occurring in response to complex traumas, i.e. commonly prolonged and repetitive exposures to a series of traumatic events within which individuals perceive little or no chance to escape. That's Wikipedia's definition. You're basically stuck in time. You're frozen in that moment, and it takes one person to say, hey, wait a minute. Why are you living in that past? What's going on? How can we get you out of the past and back into present time? And unfortunately, when you are suffering through this, people don't listen, or they're tired of the broken record, but something obviously would trigger it. And when you get these triggers, the depression kicks in overdrive, and it sucks. I lived through that, so I know. So what is it with me? What did this dude do to me that was so bad? Well, in 93-94 school year, I was in 8th grade. I was a band geek. I played clarinet. I wasn't very popular. I was recluse because that guy, while in 7th grade in band, he told the entire band to vote for the other person to move up in chair. He literally said that, don't let Salty Vixen win. I don't like her. And I lost my 2nd chair. I became 3rd chair. And I lost my confidence in playing because every time I wanted to challenge this dude, Mr. B would say, don't vote for her. Thank you, Mr. B, for that. And yes, if you want to know, for other people that are listening who know me, this is why I was recluse. It wasn't that moment. It really was 8th grade. But because of Mr. B, in the hallways of middle school, I was afraid to be near him because he would just rip one at me. And, he was funny, sometimes a little bit over the top. But his jokes really weren't that funny. In fact, his former friends said to me many years ago, I think it was like about 5 years after college, and the way they described it to me was this: you're friends with him, he'll make fun of you. But if you're not friends with him, he goes over the top. And for a long time, people remembered how he treated me. I don't know why, but then I look back on it, it made sense. So in 8th grade, I had band, I had Spanish, normal classes. So band I had with him and Mr. J, who was my 7th grade crush. Mr. B, I had a crush on in middle school because I love his personality, because we're very similar once you get to know me, and which is something he never did. So I had band with him in Spanish and, of course, lunchtime. And then I had Miss Kapersky for pre-algebra. Now, pre-algebra, I was in class with Mr. J and a girl named Karen. That's not her actual name, but her personality was very Karen-ish. And Miss Kapersky did not like the fact that she was smothering Mr. J. And everyone would remember, like, they were a hot and cold couple. 1 minute they're together, next minute they broke up. And she smothered him. I mean, it was the elephant in the room kind of, thing. But we noticed that she smothered him. When they weren't together, he breathed. And it's like, oh my gosh, Mr. J, you're totally cool to hang out with and talk to. But when he was with her, it was almost like he became, they became one personality, which are like, well, couples do that. No, this was an interesting couple. And they had hot and cold relationship throughout high school. I don't know the exact day they broke up for good. Well, actually, I do know because I saw Karen at my high school. They went to a different high school. And she chased me down the hallway. It was at a basketball game. And she's like, Salty, I see you, Salty. Come on, I broke up with him. You can have him. I know you always wanted him. I'm like, I think I was in 10th grade. I'm like, I really don't want him. I don't even talk to him anymore. Like, I haven't seen him in a couple of years. Like, why are you chasing me down? It was a bit creepy what she did, to be frank. So yeah, that did happen. People are weird, man. People are very weird. So yeah, anyway, so I had 8th grade and Miss Kapersky put me as partners with Mr. J, and Karen did not like that. And she made my life a living hell for months. Actually, no, for weeks at this point. And whenever she wasn't with Mr. J, she would say, Salty, come here. You're going to tell Miss Kapersky not to be partners with him. You're not allowed to talk to Mr. J. You can't talk to any of my friends. And she would boss me like that. Of course, I didn't listen to her because I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit. And then I got a modeling job one day. And I was so excited. It was the first paid job. It was window modeling at 579. I was going to get $150 for 8th grade, like 93, 94 school year. Like, that's freaking amazing. And so I came to school one morning, did not tell my friends yet. I was going to tell Mr. J, and I was super excited. And I saw him come in. I said, "Hey, Mr. J, can I talk to you?" He's like, "Sure." And he grabs my hand and we go into the library. He's like, "Yeah, what's up?" I said, "I got a modeling job." He's like, "You did? I'm so proud of you, Salty." And he gave me the biggest hug. And I was blushing. Hey, come on, you get a hug from a former crush? That's awesome, right? Plus, he has the most gorgeous green eyes. I can remember that part. I wonder if he's still good looking. I haven't seen him in years. Probably is. Oh, well, beside the point. And we parted ways and went to classes. And then lunch came around. And things got odd. Like, people were looking at me. And I'm sitting there like, I'm so excited. Maybe I'm going to become popular for that brief moment. And then my friends asked me, "What's going on? Why are people looking at you?" I said, "I don't know." I look over at Mr. J and I hear him talking to Karen. "Why are you letting this get to you? So what? Let her have her fun. Let her be happy. I'm proud of her. She's got a modeling job. She's not so shy. She's coming out of her shell." He said that, Karen says, "Shut up. Stop talking about her." And his brother said, "Stop talking about Salty Vixen. I hate her." His brother and I were not friends. Even though his brother was like the cutest guy ever, like so sweet, him and I just didn't like each other. I don't know why. Again, I wasn't popular. And so Karen didn't like Mr. J talking about me, and she walked over to Mr. B. So in a cafeteria, there was a stage. I sat at the table in front of the stage, and Mr. J and his posse with Karen was on the left side, and Mr. B was on the other table on the right side with his posse. And she walks over to him. And all I hear him say is, "I didn't know she had a job." "What? Modeling? We'll put a stop to this." That's what I recall. She goes and sits down and she's looking at me. She's got this smug face like, ha, ha, ha. And he walks over to me with his little posse. He says, "I hear you got a modeling job for what, a dog food commercial? You're so ugly, not even dogs would like you. Heh, heh, heh." You're going, "Salty, why do you remember that?" Because I wrote it down and it was on repeat mode for years because I couldn't understand what the hell I ever did to him. And I remember the other part of the phrase just now. He said, "I hear you like me. Karen told me. I'm dating this girl. Leave me alone. I will never like you. Do you understand, Salty?" And he sits back down. And my friends said to me, "What's his issue?" I said, "I don't know. Maybe he's fighting with his brother." Because I knew his older brother. I met his older brother when I was in 6th. He was in 8th. His brother was real sweet to me. His brother actually told me to become friends with his brother who was in my grade because he's the coolest guy you'll ever meet. And I remember that. Also, by the way, his brother in 6th grade stopped an 8th grader from doing something very bad to me. Him and his bestie saw what the guy was doing. Say it starts with an R, ends with an E. The dude had a mullet. His name was Jeff. I'm not going to say his last name. I do recall. And at that point in time, his brother grabbed my hand, showed me around the school, even taught me my locker combination, and also told me that the band room is a place to go when you're super stressed out. So that's where that connection is. He also taught me my first drums. I held mallets for the first time. I had rhythm then, but I was a clarinetist for years, and I did flute freshman year in high school, and I did percussion my last 2 years, cymbals, but I had confidence then. And he also told me in 6th grade, if you have any problems, come talk to me. He would see how kids were with me, my own peers, and I remember now recalling when I had lunchtime and he was in the band room and I was looking in, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they sound so cool. I can't wait till I'm in 8th grade," kind of thing. And some kids would say something awful to me and he would look at me and he'd nod his head and to get me to just ignore what they're saying. So he was always a good guy, very sweet person. And I think it wasn't a crush until end of my freshman year of high school with him. But yeah, I remember how good he was to me. And one of the few people out there who was nice to me had a big impact. I think that's why he has a big impact for me or on me, because I existed with him. With most of my peers, I did not exist. That's the psychological aspect of that. I just pointing that out. So yeah, going back to what the bully did to me, and yes, he was classified as a bully back then. He's not anymore. Obviously, we all grew up from that. So my friends go, "What's his issue?" I said, "I don't know. He's fighting with his brothers." I think I said it earlier. That's all I knew. Anyways, I remember that his cousin with her friends said to me, "That's not nice, Salty. I'm going to tell him you said that." And I said, "No, you're not." And she's like, "Fine, I won't say anything to him." So she walks up to Karen, and I don't know what was exactly said because the cousin I grew up together in elementary school, we were never friends because she was friends with that group of people that bullied me in elementary school. By the way, she was with that group of friends in 1st through 3rd grade that when I went to the bathroom, they would go into the bathroom and look under the stall to watch me pee. I shit you not. They were trying to see if I was truly a girl. Yeah, you're like, what? They also did the ding dong ditch thing as well for about a couple of weeks. And my grandmother got tired of it and told their parents and they stopped. So, I mean, yeah, it was a fun experience. No, I did not have a great experience in childhood with my peers. So anyways, they go and tell Karen, and not even like 10 seconds later, Karen walks over to where Mr. B is and says something to him. I don't know till say what was said. And I remember he clenched his fist and he looks at me and he said, "What? What did she say? What a bitch. Oh, she's not going to, be the end of this here. I'm not going to let her win this," or whatever, something along those lines. Again, a long time ago. He walks over to me in an angry walk and very aggressive and says to me, "Salty, what did you say? Is that true? Did you really say that about my family? How dare you? You're despicable, the worst human being ever." I mean, he was just throwing verbal assault to me. And I was dumbfounded. I'm like, what the hell did I say? All I said was he's probably arguing with his brother. And, apparently it was obviously worse. A lie that Karen had said because she was so pissed off that I was math partners with her boyfriend. And I did tell Ms. Kapersky to switch, and she's like, no, he needs to focus on school, not his girlfriend. I remember that. Yeah, I mean, she made my life hell, what she did. And instead of him coming to me privately and say, "Hey, Salty, can we talk about this? I want to know what's the truth," he just went to the jugular. And you think that was done? Oh no, he sat back down. And I'm looking at Mr. J, who says to Karen, "That was harsh. Why would you do it? What did you say?" She said, "I don't like her being friends with you. I don't like her doing this." What Karen found out, I think at that moment, before all the shit hit the fan, Mr. J's brother told Karen that I had called for math help, which is true. I was getting some math homework because I missed that day. And Mr. J had played on his guitar and sang to me "Stairway to Heaven" for the talent show that was up and coming at the time, which he was incredibly talented. I mean, just a beautiful singer from what I recall. "Stairway to Heaven," the way he did it, oh, it was beautifully done. And I can recall that. In fact, when I listen to that song, I think about him singing it till this day. And when I played on my piano, I played the version that I recall because I'm good at remembering things. And yeah. So, I mean, it didn't make sense. Like what all this shit hit the fan at this point. And because of that, I was tired of being bullied by my peers, and Mr. B was the icing of the cake. And I remember running to the payphone, and I looked over at Mr. B, who is glaring at me, giving me the death stare. And Mr. J, who saw that I was like, tears were streaming down my eyes at this point. And Mr. J walks over to me as I had the payphone in my hand, and he grabs it in my hand and he puts it back on the receiver and says, "You're not going home." I said, "Mr. J, my life is not worth living. I can't do this anymore. I'm bullied all the time. My friends don't even stick up for me. I don't know what I did to deserve any of this." And he said to me, as he gave me a hug, he said, "Life is beautiful. Life is worth living. Don't let him or the others get to you. I will talk to Mr. B for you." Of course, he didn't at the time. He waited till after school. After lunch, we had Spanish. But yeah, Mr. J is the reason why I'm still living, by the way. Yeah, I nearly ended my life because of Mr. B. No one knew that. And we had Spanish, and Mr. J had not arrived, and I was going to sit with Mr. J, like at the table next to him, because I needed that protection. And Mr. J was like, I think he was talking to Karen. If I recall, he was actually tardy. And as I came into the Spanish room, Mr. Drellis' class, Mr. B sat down a few rows over and stood up as people came in and said, "Nobody sit next to her. Nobody talk to her. She's the worst human being. She's awful. She's not worth it." And tears started streaming down again. I've never been in that mindset in my life. But as a result, the aftermath of what Mr. B had done was why I was timid for years. When I came to high school, why I was so timid, why I was afraid to talk to people, because he got into my head that I can't talk to people, that I'm not good enough, that I'm ugly, and words he would throw at me. And if you know my stories, when I go, "Dear First Dom," in fact, the song I just had published I composed and published on my Salty Vixen Music YouTube channel titled Dear First Dom, there's a couple of lines in there that you made me submissive. In the BDSM terms, you have a dominant person and submissive. That's what that's referring to. What he had did to me. I was submissive. He was dominant. And if you read a lot of BDSM stories, a lot of the authors who write that, they're putting the trauma into characters, things that happen to them, and make light of it. So yeah, I made trauma characters from the crap I've been through, and First Dom is ultimately inspired by that moment and what happened. And, we never really talked after that. We had one class together, I think, history, Mr. Davis's class. He sat in my row. He was a little bit nicer to me. But after that, he was kind of an ass to me throughout high school. So we really didn't talk that much until senior year. Was I senior or junior? I think I was a junior. When he had heard how bad his brother was to me at band camp, when his brother graduated and came back to help out, because people talked, and he heard about it, and he talked to me about it, and we had a nice conversation. I'm like, oh my God, he's actually being nice to me. And he saw how one of the peers who decided to become percussion overlord was treating me. And I remember sitting out in the hallway in front of the band room, and marching band had been outside. I just couldn't be out there because my anxiety was kicking in. Now, you're in high school. This is the 90s. I had no idea what anxiety was. I had no idea what trauma was, but something was kicking it. And Mr. B hugged me. And he said, you need to stand up for yourself. As long as I've known you, you've never stood up for yourself. And he was right. I never did. And I did that day. And I made the guy cry. Not Mr. B, the other dude. And I felt guilty and called him up. And I said, I'm so sorry. But the guy made fun of me after that because you should never apologize. But I don't like drama. And the following day, Mr. B says, I heard you stood up for yourself. I'm proud of you. But I mean, I've never hated him. It's just I never understood what I did to him. Now you're going, okay, so what does this have to do with bringing the past into light and talking about it on this podcast? Well, simple. After sexting-gate happened and shit hit the fan, him and I did talk. He contacted me. I told him we need to talk on the phone, call me. This is major. And I had rehearsed in my head what I would say to him because this is many years down the road of me standing up for myself. And he called me. And right off the bat, he says, he says, I heard what happened. I don't know the full story. I want to know. I don't want to know. How did you contact? You guys need to quit talking to each other. This bickering needs to stop. They need to heal. You need to heal. I'm like, dude, do you know what we were doing for off and on for 2 years and 10 months? I want to know. I don't want to know. And I started crying. And he says, Salty, don't cry. You need to heal. What can we do to heal? And the words couldn't come out. I froze. It wasn't because of him now. It's because tears were coming in from a wound from many years ago for what he had did to me. I'm getting emotional thinking about it because I never had a voice, and that was the main thing. And even then, after we got off the phone, I felt guilty for speaking up. Because he told me that they need to heal. He told me that I had no business telling the other party about what happened. And I'm like, dude, if my my husband was cheating on me, I'd want to know the full story, whether it hurt or not. And what sucks is they all threw me under the bus. I don't know what was said because the other party was cyber stalking me for 3.5 years. I let it go. And, I finally healed from that, but I hadn't fully healed from Mr. B. I had not fully healed from him. Because for the longest time, I wondered, why didn't he ever contact me? Yeah, I know he's not obligated to. But something like this, considering the person that I am, and on both ends, I think I just wanted him to reach out to me and say, hey, what's the full story? And he didn't. And this was hanging on me for a number of years. And I've talked to people in trauma groups that have gone through trauma in similar situations. And they said, it's something you'll never fully get over it. The trust is gone, and it makes dating so hard. I've been let down by so many people my entire life, my friends, my family, that the only person that I wanted to hear from was the one that caused me to be submissive, to feel small, because I just wanted to be a voice to be heard. And I would have moved on. But instead, I created my Salty Vixen character. And I should, say, to be honest, my Salty Vixen pen name, it was created in England, but the root of it was from him. I wanted a voice to be heard. It was a cry for help. I was going through such a depression because he made me feel guilty for speaking up, for having a voice. And no one should ever do that. No one should ever make you feel bad. But he did. And I'm terrified of him sometimes when I think about him. But then when I do think about him, I get in that complex PTSD mode, and then I think about his voice is very calming. And I think about, how can I get past this? So I create these characters, the trauma characters, like I said earlier, to combat my depression, to combat my anxieties. Every single artist does that. Painting, singers, painters, singers, authors. Because it's not them, it's inspired. And that's helped me heal. But yeah, I mean, the emotions are going to be there. I wish I could find somebody. I wish I could get a stable relationship, but dating world fucking sucks. And that's why my podcast, I talk about it. But in hindsight, I made a kick-ass brand. Because Salty Vixen is a positive name. Because he is my protection. I go into that shell when my anxiety kicks in, but I get out of it at the same time thinking about that moment. He's my complex PTSD, that source. But also my strength. And that's a fucking powerful pen name. But it's not about him. It's about me. About my growth. And that's amazing. Yeah, I know I write erotica. Yeah, I mean, that was my healing thing. But the good news is I built a brand from that. And I'm building more. I'm doing more things. And I'm super excited. Because that's what every artist does. And the question remains, as we get older, will I ever talk to that person? I kind of hope at some point we do have a conversation. It would be nice just to have some tea. Or, I don't know. I don't drink, so I don't know how we would have that. But just to have that long conversation, that much overdue one. But the reality of it is, will it happen? Probably not. And maybe perhaps he does hear this and know that he's a source of all this depression. My mental health issues is because of him. And it's taken a long time to admit that. You're going, well, why are you doing this on a podcast? Because podcast is a way to heal. It's therapeutic. But it gets the word out there to know that I'm not alone. Because unfortunately, in this world, it's a fucking lonely world. Remember I said earlier, I do go on dating sites. I'm trying to find that person. But I haven't found that person yet. I don't go moping on these sites. I'm pretty, when I meet people, I get excited. But the biggest problem I've had from dating apps, to be honest, is 98% of the dates, they want to fucking hook up and I don't do them. And a lot of women know what I'm talking about. This happens a lot. And we're options. So a man talks to you and like, oh, I'm going on a date. They also have other dates lined up, which is incredibly frustrating. Because women, we generally don't talk to multiple men. We talk to you, get to know you, hoping something will come from that. But I'm not a broken woman. I'm telling you my complex PTSD origin. But, honestly, I'm a happy person majority of the time. But see, as a woman and hormones kick in, especially when you're heightened because you really need to get, that something, and you're not getting it, it sucks. It does get depressing. Even my guy friends talk about the fact when they're not getting intimacy, I'm talking about to my single friends, for a very long time. They get depressed. They're like, yeah, I have my spank bank, but that's great. But it's not the real thing. And I've known married people who have been married for years and they're living like friends. They're not getting intimate with each other. Sadly, that's why a lot of people cheat. That's why sexting-gate happened. Because we're both on the same page about lack of intimacy. He knew my private thoughts. I knew his. And for the first time, I felt beautiful by him because I always liked him. He knew how I felt about him. And I think about now, as I've healed from that, I think for both of us, it was supposed to be a one-time deal, but it just became an addiction. Maybe because we were trying to reminisce what would have been like in high school if we had dated. That's what I perceived. And frankly, if we had dated in high school, ooh, it would have been hot. I had a fantasy, now I'm thinking about it. In the band room, there was like these warm-up rooms or these practice rooms, is what they were, in the back. Had these like ancient computers in there from the early 90s, late 80s. I remember that. And I would often have a fantasy, I think a lot of people did, go in the band room to get some hanky-panky, apparently it did happen. And I was hoping with him. So there were days I'd wear these like cute skirts and I wanted him to notice me. And then when we were taking roll call, I think it was my sophomore year, we had band together. And I remember while the teacher was giving the roll call and talking about what's going on during the week, I would take the clarinet because the clarinet has a stereotype, what it represents. Yes, it's true. And I would look at him and lick the reed. And I didn't realize what I was representing at the time, but now I look back on it, yeah, subconsciously. And I would look at him and I'd try to get him nervous. And he would go sit down at the drum set where the bass drum was covering that area. And I'm laughing now. I'm like, oh my God, he did notice. Because I talked to other people years later and they said, oh yeah, we noticed that. You were a tease. Yeah, I was a shy flirt. I said, well, if you guys got to, date me, you could have gotten to know me. They're like, yeah, but you were so hung up on him. I know, because he's so hot. I still think he's hot. I mean, there's nothing wrong with saying that. He is incredibly a good-looking man. They all are good-looking. And they're good people. So even though I am venting about the past, I'm not venting the past like obsessing. I'm just saying, hey, this is where, what the source is. I've healed from all that. And when you go to my Bedtime Stories with Salty Vixen, my Spicy Story podcast, it's not about them. These are trauma characters I created. They don't exist. They're British in my head, to be honest. But I think about the 90s version sometimes, the long hair. That's what comes to mind. But honestly, they're polo players and they're British. But it's the inspiration characters. Because that's the only way I keep from being lonely. Yeah, I know. A lot of authors are lonely. A lot of people are lonely in this dating world. And what helps us is writing or painting or music. For me, I do all of that. I keep myself busy. And since I'm creating art, I'll make money off of it. That's all. I wonder if they know about the stories. Yeah, they probably do. They probably get a laugh out of it. And that's the whole point. They know they are the thought muse, the inspired, but it's not them. It's my creation. It's kind of hot, actually. I wonder, with authors, when they write stories, people reading the story, do they go, oh my God, I must be inspired by this character? That's it. Inspiration. But as I evolved and healed and created this wonderful business, honestly, my Dr. Malcolm and my Dom Sir, he's 100% British. The doctor name came from Doctor Who. That's it. I was watching an episode one day. All right, my lovies, have a lovely day. Goodbye.
Come and share with me. So let's chat about the highs, let's chat about the lows. In this cozy little corner, anything goes. Every sip tells a story, every word brings a smile. With every conversation, we'll go that extra mile.